Johnny Talk Sports with my Week 3 college football predictions. Week 2 is another great week. Well, it was an okay week. We had good quantity, but not good quality. The two games I missed last week, I thought Stanford was going to upset USC, and I also thought Ohio State was going to dominate Oklahoma, but neither of those happened. 8-2, we're going to take those losses. We're going to move on to Week 3. Now, there's not a lot of good matchups this week, so I tried to pick out 10. I tried to do my best with that, so we'll see how I do. Lots of alright matchups, but I feel like a lot of these might be one-sided. At least the first couple are going to be, at least in my opinion. Number 9, Oklahoma State and Pittsburgh. I feel like Oklahoma State's just going to waltz right into Pittsburgh and get an easy W. Although Pittsburgh made it a little bit tough on Penn State, they kept it in within 14 points. But I just think the offense led by Mason Rudolph is going to be enough for Oklahoma State in this matchup. Number 25, UCLA versus Memphis. Now we're going to see two great quarterbacks in this matchup. Josh Rosen for UCLA, Riley Ferguson for Memphis. But I got to give the advantage to UCLA and Josh Rosen. I just feel like ever since that 34-point comeback against Texas A&M in Week 1, I feel like maybe this is the start of a big run for UCLA. And UCLA's got a big matchup in Week 4 against Stanford. So we'll see if this... But is UCLA too focused on Stanford right now? That's the question. I think they're maybe a little bit focused on Stanford right now, but I think they're going to do just enough to get past Memphis. I like UCLA to get the W. Number 10, Wisconsin versus BYU. Now, BYU has had a hard time finding their identity yet this year. They showed signs of life against Utah last week, but I just can't go against the Badgers at this point because the Badgers are the most consistent team in the Big Ten right now. And yes, that's what I'm saying. Even with Penn State in their conference, even with Michigan in their conference, I think Wisconsin is the most consistent. So I think the Badgers are going to get the W against BYU. This is one of the two ranked matchups we have. Number 23, Tennessee versus number 24, Florida. Now, the last time we saw Florida, their defense was responsible for 14 of their 17 points. Florida's yet to score a touchdown this year. In fact, the only game they've played this year was against Michigan because their games were canceled last week. Only 11 rushing yards for Florida this year. Now, Tennessee had a difficult time stopping that triple option of Georgia Tech. But I feel like Tennessee got all those reps in last week and Florida hasn't. I think this matchup favors Tennessee. I think they're going to get this win behind their running game of John Kelly. Because Michigan's running game looked great against Florida in Week 1. I expect to see the same thing in this matchup. I think Tennessee wins. Number 12, LSU versus Mississippi State. Now, this doesn't look like a great matchup on paper, but Mississippi State could make some noise in this matchup. Mississippi State did upset LSU back in 2015. But I honestly think that this LSU team's been better than it was back in 2015. I think they've shown some life in their quarterback in Danny Etling. And the running game has been looking great this season. So I'm going to pick LSU in this matchup. So far, I've picked all the road teams to win this week. And it continues here, a little bit of a spoiler alert. Oregon versus Wyoming. Oh, I thought Wyoming was going to show some signs of life against Iowa. They did for about the first half. But I just feel like Wyoming's defense will not be able to handle the tempo of Oregon. But Oregon's got to put that second half against Nebraska behind them. They were up 42-14 at the half, but they allowed Nebraska to get to within 7, and they just did enough in the second half to get the win. I think Oregon needs to put that behind them and focus on this matchup against Wyoming. I think they're going to do that, especially behind Royce Freeman. Because when Royce Freeman gets going, there's no stopping this Oregon offense. I think that's going to be the case in this matchup. Oregon gets the win. Next matchup, an SEC matchup. Both these teams are 2-0 to start the year. Kentucky and South Carolina. So the winner of this game is going to start their season off 3-0. And not a lot of people expected that. But I think this matchup favors South Carolina. South Carolina's played some tougher competition than Kentucky has this year. South Carolina with wins over NC State and Missouri, especially in a rout against Missouri on the road. And with South Carolina being back at home, their first home game of the year, I think they're going to pull off this win. I think South Carolina gets this W. Texas versus number 4 USC. Now Texas had a 56-0 victory against San Jose State, I believe. It was either 49-0 or 56-0. I can't remember that, but they did shut out San Jose State. And I think that was good for Texas to get that win, to kind of give them some reps for USC. Sam Darnold did make some mistakes again this past week against Stanford. I think Sam Darnold has to put those mistakes behind him. If Sam Darnold turns the ball over more than 3 times, I'm talking he throws at least 3 interceptions, I don't think USC can win this matchup. But I think Sam Darnold puts these mistakes behind him. I think USC wins this matchup, especially behind that running game. I think USC gets the win. I could see Texas competing in this game for a little bit, but I think USC pulls away in the second half, kind of like what we saw against Western Michigan and Stanford so far this season. I think USC should have no problems toward the end of this game. Ole Miss versus California. Now, Ole Miss is 2-0 to start the year. They are not allowed to play in a bowl game this year with the sanctions of these NCAA sanctions. They had a self-imposed 1-year ban, which led to the firing of Hugh Freeze. Then it turns out they're the resigning of Hugh Freeze. He was technically fired, but they kind of talked him into resigning. That's my opinion. It's the Ole Miss in California. I think Ole Miss has got an advantage in this matchup. California's lost their starting running back for the season, but he wasn't the best running back statistically so far. But still, it's the starting running back. But I think Ole Miss has the advantage here. I think they got the better quarterback in Shea Patterson, who's thrown 9 touchdown passes, only 1 interception this year. I think Ole Miss gets the road victory against Cal. Although there could be a small disadvantage, maybe the time travel, because Ole Miss is in the East Coast and Cal is in the West Coast. So that could maybe lean towards time difference, maybe. But I think Ole Miss gets the W in this one, behind Shea Patterson. And finally, the game of the week. This is the other top 25 ranked matchup. This is the top 15 matchup, actually. Number 3, Clemson versus number 14, Louisville. And I think this is going to be a great game. We're going to see Kelly Bryant, after he was injured last week against Auburn, but he managed to come back and lead the Tigers to victory. But Clemson did win behind the 11 sacks from their defense. And I feel like their defense will play a huge difference in this matchup as well, as Louisville has replaced some offensive line from last year. But Lamar Jackson seemed to progress into a better quarterback so far this year than he was last year. But in this matchup, I got to pick Clemson this one. I just think they'll win this matchup behind their defense again in this game. If the defense can get to Lamar Jackson early, I think this is going to be a long night. I think it'll be a long night for the Louisville Cardinals. But I'm going to pick Clemson, win a close one. I think the defense is the difference in the matchup again this year. And plus, I believe that the passing game of Kelly Bryant is going to be a difference maker as well. Rayleigh McLeod, Hunter Renfrow, those will be difference makers as well. I like Clemson to pick up a close victory. I'm going to say 35. I'm going to say 34, 35, 28. I think it's going to be a one-possession game. So those are my picks this week. If you're keeping score at home, I have picked Oklahoma State over Pittsburgh, UCLA over Memphis, Wisconsin over BYU, Tennessee over Florida, LSU over Mississippi State, Oregon over Wyoming, South Carolina over Kentucky, USC over Texas, Ole Miss over California, and Clemson over Louisville. So comment your picks down below, like and subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter at JB Talk Sports. Have a wonderful night, everybody. I will see you next time.